Okay.
There you go. So this has been a long time coming.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah, we talked about it a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Something like that.
And you get to be the first person.
Well, I'm very honored, and I apologize in advance.
You know, so there's going to be a lot of people that don't know you and a lot of people that don't know me. We're going to end up getting in and talking about a lot of different stuff. But I actually wanted to bring you in first because you have a number of unique perspectives. I think that you look at what 906 Adventure Team does. You know, you have different vantage points. You're a coach. You are a parent of a child that's in the adventure team in Marquette. You're a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're a Hall of Pain member,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Polar Roll, Crusher, Marji, the big ones.
Yeah.
So
You don't have that list memorized?
I do not. It's always growing. Always growing.
Good.
But here's a question I was thinking about on the way over here this morning, because I don't know what your story is on it. You've clearly adopted, and maybe you've always had this, but you've clearly adopted, like, you've bought into doing hard things. So I'm curious, has that just always been where you were at? Have you just naturally always been a doer of hard things? Or what's that journey been? How'd you get there? How did the events play into that? I'm curious because I honestly don't know.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great question. I want to go back to how we met, if I could, because it's a good story.
Yeah, go back.
Because I was in, those of us that were in that early snow bike era, like the original OG time when you're just out with some slightly larger mountain bike tires and blazing trail, and you'd go out with 6 guys and you'd just be glad you didn't have to go out first because there was no grooming then, there was no anything. And then Polar Roll came out, and it was one of the first fat bike events, and I grabbed a hold of my buddies and I was like, hey, you guys got to come up to Marquette and do this fat bike race. It's going to be great. And I convinced my sister to come up and trial a fat bike the night before, and she's like, this is fun, I'll do it. And 8 hours later out on the course, we thought she was dead, and found out she was spending 2 hours at the Hugs and Bacon station the whole time. And so you and her connected then, and then
Yep.
I didn't even know you then, really, but
That was at the old Hugs and Bacon down on the snowmobile trail.
that was the original,
in Marquette.
The original.
And I remember meeting her.
Yeah, I know. She knows.
Yep.
Yeah. So that became a thing, and we've been doing it every year, and it's been a blast. And then, I don't know, I've started doing the events. I never had I never grew up doing hard stuff. I had a pretty standard childhood, suburban life. Not, I did some sports here and there, but that was never my thing. I was never an endurance athlete ever, which is really interesting. It took me meeting my wife, Katie, who is an endurance athlete, and she
interesting.
put me into shape. And she's like, hey, if we're gonna make this thing go, you're gonna have to do stuff. We're not just gonna sit at the bar.
Yeah.
Like
Every guy that hears this is nodding his head.
Yeah, sure. And and she got me into skiing and biking. She got me into mountain biking. And that first ride, she killed me. I'm like, I can ride a bike. This is stupid. I can keep up
Mm-hmm.
with some women mountain bikers. What's the big deal? I've ridden a bike before, which is, but moved to Marquette. That's where I get my toes wet dipping into the mountain bike scene here, of all places. And I think I remember that ride. I was out there and I got a flat tire, and I was like, oh, thank God.
You and flat tires.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It seems to be a thing.
When it is a thing, it is. Most of the time, it's not.
Yeah. What were we doing? Were we doing Polar Roll that time that we started together?
Yeah, we were just out for a ride. I think we were climbing.
We went up through Gorgeous.
We went up Gorgeous. We climbed
Yeah.
Gorgeous. It was a beautiful day, and and I've had this problem with that bike. I finally took it in before Polar Roll this year. I was like, I gotta fix this, and I think it just needed some tape.
Yeah,
But
good.
Anyway, it's
So,
better now.
Polar Roll was the intro.
That was the intro.
2015.
Yeah.
That was the first one.
Yep. So 2015, and then my buddy Joel Dank.
Yep.
He a good friend of mine, great biker, and he was like, we got to do the Marji. So we did the half Marji, and we did that a couple of years. We're like, all right, let's upgrade and go from there. And then I think this will resonate with a lot of people that are listening in. Maybe just once you start down that path, it just accelerates from there. So
you did the 50. When was your first 50 for the Marji Gesick?
I did every year except the very first one.
Okay, so 16 would have been your first.
Yeah.
And then 17. Yeah, because 15. We did Polar Roll 2015 in February.
Yeah.
And then in July, we were like, let's do a 100-mile mountain bike race. And we did that in September.
Yeah. So it would have been 16. And then I haven't missed a year. But I did 50-50 first couple of years. And then Joel and I are like, let's sign up for the 100. We did Lutzen.
Yep.
99er.
Yep,
like
99er.
Trainer. And that was fun. And then, so he's been, so we've attempted it many times together. And he's going to finish this year. This is his year.
So you haven't finished together?
We've finished the 50.
Yeah, but not the 100.
Together. Every year I've ever done Marji, I've finished with a different person. It's kind of a
That
weird
sounds about
statistic.
right. Yeah. And did you know them before you finished with them?
Almost half the time.
Yeah.
I finished with Katie. Katie and I did the 50 a couple years back. There was a guy I rode with last year. We did the 100 on single speeds last year.
Yeah. Who is it? You remember?
Oh God, shoot! I'll be annoyed. He'll be annoyed too. Great guy though. He had attempted multiple times, and this was his first time he was able to finish. He was great, and he had this great support crew that helped support me, which was nice.
So you didn't know him before?
We met rolling out of
Yep.
Jackson the second time. I caught up to him going up the switchbacks, and he said, "Go ahead and pass." And I'm like, "If you don't mind, I'd like to just hang out." And he's like, "Yeah, that's great." And so we just finished up together.
And then how long were you together? For the whole day?
No, just from there to the finish. I just met him coming out of Jackson the second time.
Okay. Coming out of Jackson the second time. So last 15?
Yeah. Yeah.
Together.
Middle of the night, rolling out at midnight.
Middle of the night.
Was
Complete stranger previously.
never met him. Yeah. And then we just got to chat. And the funny thing is at the top of the water tower hill there.
Yeah.
I don't remember what mile that is, 90 something. I hear this. We were sitting there taking a break, and I hear this voice behind me. It's like, "Hey, is that Ryan?" And I turn around, I'm like, and you can't see because it's black. And
Right.
who's that? It's like, hey, it's Wyatt.
Yeah, Clement.
And Wyatt was out there, and so him and he was the first person I finished the 100 with.
I remember that.
out there. And
How old was he when you guys finished?
18.
Yeah.
18. I want to say it was the youngest at the time. I don't know if that record still stands.
We've had a 16-year-old finish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the time it was impressive.
Yeah. When he was riding a ton,
Yeah. Well, it was great to see
he was
him.
riding a
But
ton.
he was back. I was excited to see him back because I know that we had chatted here and there. I see him around town, and I knew he wasn't biking as much.
Yeah. So I'm curious. You said that you finished with some people you knew. You finished with some people you didn't know, like this guy, the single speed guy. Though you're riding the last 15 miles with somebody you don't know, pitch black. How long had you been out there at the point that you left Jackson the second time, do you think? How many hours?
It was midnight, so it was
15,
yeah,
12, 15. Yeah, probably. No, 17.
17
17 hours.
yeah.
So you left JP2 at 17 hours.
Yeah, at least.
And probably took, when did you come in?
Yeah, 22-ish. So we were out there for 5 hours, 4 or 5, yeah. Which is crazy. You think, how could you possibly take that long to do
Yeah.
15 miles.
Right.
It's how it is in the middle of the night, and it's pitch black, and it's the worst part of the trail.
If you reflect on that, I know right now you can't recall the guy's name, but just having that experience with him, or just in general having that type of experience with a person, sharing it with a person, how, like for you personally, how Mark and I have done a lot of stuff together. We've had a lot of rides. I can remember the Crusher when we did it together in 23, the EX225. I can remember it vividly. And we've had other things we've done together before that, but it's like there's a lot about Mark I don't know. But what I do know is what we've done together and what we've experienced together. And that bond is really, I think, that's the glue.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just curious, like, from your perspective, for you personally, how has what you've done in the events with people you knew or didn't know, how does that affect the relationship?
Well, yeah, I mean, anybody who's been in that, and it's every time. It's not just this, Margie. It's every endurance event that you do. You're going to, I mean, a real endurance. I mean, like a little marathon or something.
5K.
You're running, but even like a 3-hour, 4-hour thing, you just don't quite have that same. It has to be a full day of. And this isn't true for bucklers. Obviously, they're in a different mindset. But for those of us who are just out there to just get it done,
yeah, to just do it.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Is to have every event I've ever done, it's come to that. The one guy I will remember, the Crusher 235. I was kind of on my own for a good 50 miles rolling into Lance, and then it was same thing. It was like midnight or whatever time of the day, going up Mount Arvon in the middle of the night, and Katie's there, and she's like, "I'm gonna try and find you a buddy in the parking lot, so you're not leaving here, alone."
Right. That's 21 when you finished, right?
Yeah.
The point to point.
Yeah, it was and I remember Kenny Peterson. I remember Kenny, great guy. But him and he had lost his crew, and I had lost my crew, and he's like, "You going back out?" I'm like, "Yeah, how about you?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, let's do it together." And we did the whole rest of the thing together. And that bonding that happens over, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what military personnel and combat is like, but I can imagine that there's some bit of like shared
commonality.
Yeah. And then you build these bonds and relations. So Kenny and I have connected multiple times after that, and I'm always looking out for him and scanning his name here and there. And
isn't it interesting when you get in it? Because at these events, you're right. I think that if you get some of these shorter events that are more, let's just say less intense, they don't take you as deep, they don't strip you down as far as Margie does, or Crusher, or Polar Roll on some years. It's interesting how it has a way of simplifying. Those experiences have a way of simplifying what matters and what doesn't matter. And you can put so many other things, you can put so many things aside that would otherwise maybe be points of contention. If you're at the pub, living the good life, the easy life, having a beer, and you're going to get into some political topic or something, and all of a sudden your difference of opinion will matter, right? You might debate stuff, but on the fucking trail doing the Marji Gesick, that shit does not matter. And it's amazing how quickly we just let it go.
Yeah, and more importantly than I think, and I haven't done a tremendous amount of endurance events that aren't 906 affiliated, so my understanding of that is a little bit limited. I've done a couple things here and there, but it's not just about the distance. I think it's what the idea of just doing the event to do the event, it takes away that competition.
Sure.
Every other major event, I've done so many other big ski races and bike races and big mass start events, and that's fun and that's exciting and it's enjoyable.
Sure.
But for those events that you're really just out there grueling through some nasty shit.
Yeah. So it's not about a podium, not about cash prizes.
And when you have that mentality, you are out there to support each other.
Right.
you're not cutting people off. You're not, trying to pass. You're not,
Right.
I mean, that's the thing that I always come back to with Margie is everybody's out there to bring everybody through and to bring everybody along.
Sure.
And that's what makes it unique and special, I think.
Well, I think it calibrates the perspective, like you're in this together.
Yeah.
The whole blame Danny, blame Todd that we rolled out in 2015, it was a last minute idea. It was like, hey, this course is going to suck. And every time they're on a climb and their legs are burning, we want them to know who to blame. So that's what the idea was. So you put signs out, blame Todd, blame Danny across 100 miles. It was just a joke. It obviously has taken hold, 11 years later. But I think there's also a piece to that psychologically where you're out there, you got, the first year it was like 100 people. Then we went to 300, 500. Now we're at 1,500. When you got that many people out there, you're all suffering through the same challenges, mind games, trying to figure out where the checkpoints are. Is this real? Is this fake? And we're sort of orientating, you're all in this together, and it's these other people that you're trying to basically beat, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. I think that also helps psychologically out on course because it's like you against us, that type of piece, which also is fueled by us de-incentivizing podiums and cash prizes.
But what you're saying there, and I agree, is there's a team mentality.
Yes.
And the folks that struggle that I've seen on the course, I mean, again, those guys that are out there trying to crush it for time, that's a different kind of folk. But almost invariably, people are bailing individually.
Sure.
And when they have that support, it makes it a little easier going. I mean, I don't know. I'm a scientist. I'd love to see the data on this and ultra endurance events and things. But yeah, the guys, I watch the guys out there who are on their own.
Mm-hmm.
They're having a much harder time. And not saying they can't do it. It's doable, but it's so much more impactful when you have the tribe and the team to support you.
So those guys that you're referencing, are these guys like the guys you think that are out there, they have some specific goal in their head, and anybody else on course, they're not necessarily viewing that they're in it together. It's like almost like these other people are in my way between me and my goal, whatever my goal is.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I think the majority of folks are out there just to get her done, for sure.
I would agree with that.
But there's always some that are like, oh, I got to make this 12 hours, or I got to make this 16, and those are the ones that are, they're in a different place.
Right.
And that's fine. They're racing. They're doing a different race.
Yep.
But that's a different kind of mentality.
We've had countless stories, mostly from Margie, but also from Crusher on the 225, where a couple of riders are side by side. They're together. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're deep into the event, and one of the riders ends up being in a really, really bad negative headspace. Like, fuck this. This sucks. Mm-hmm. Screw Todd. I'm quit. The first chance I get, I'm out. And I've heard countless times, Matt O'Meara actually comes to mind. He wrote a long letter to me about how he had a guy come up and do that to him. Like, Matt was in a decent headspace. He was rolling into JP2 for the second time, where he was then going to go out until the last 15 and eventually finish. And he felt like he was in a position to do it. But this guy came up and got in his head, and Matt ended up quitting. Right? So this guy actually turned his own, mental hold he had on the event. Then he quits. And immediately the next morning, he's like, oh, my God, and regretted it.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Because I've heard this before. I mean, Matt, to his credit, he wrote a letter. He kind of came clean on it. It was a hilarious letter. I got to find it. I have it saved somewhere. He kept...
Get some good letters.
Oh, yeah. Well, we get some good letters and some bad letters.
Yeah.
But with that letter, he sent me the tokens that he had collected. And he gave them to me, and he said, keep these and bring them to the finish line next year, because I'm going to be there to get him back from you.
Nice.
And he did come back the next year. He got in and he did finish it. And we did give him his tokens back.
I mean, it's yeah, I know where you're going, but that's exactly it. It's just, there's all these little things. I mean, how many of these interesting stories you've had where people are like, well, there's all this superstition involved.
Yeah.
But more than that, and I don't need to tell anybody this, everybody knows, it has nothing to do with your physical ability. I mean, it's
all mental.
You have to have something there.
Sure.
But it's way less than what people think. I mean, you can go out there and train all day, ride the course, do all that kind of stuff, and that'll help. But it's just it pales in comparison to what you need to do to prepare your mental fortitude. It's not even close.
Yeah, I've said for a long time that I have watched many, many people who consider themselves let's say an athlete. They consider themselves an athlete. They're highly trained. They're extremely fit physically. Mm-hmm. I've watched many of them quit. Many, many more quit. Many of those have quit more than, I'd say, Bob from Iowa.
Absolutely.
You know, Bob is not an athlete.
Yeah.
He got up late to Marquette because he had to work. You know, he missed packet pickup, so he's got to get his bib in the morning. He shows up. He doesn't know what he got into. His Garmin is freaking out. He's like, shit.
When you think about the Marji and you think about what you envision that guy who does the Marji I don't know. I think what the general public who maybe knows a little bit about the event sees. Mm-hmm. I don't know. They see a guy like Mark, maybe the specimen over there that he is, but they see like this typical, ultra endurance athlete looking guy, full kit, the whole thing. And when you look at the finish line, there are those guys there too. Yep. But the ones that are in my mind, the ones that are out there, I think it's on some level, it's easy to do it fast. It's easier if you can rip it in 16 hours and you're done before sunset. I mean, that's hard to go fast for that long. I certainly agree, but there's a different level of strength and toughness to be able to stay out for another 8 hours after that in the dark, pushing through. I mean, that's just a lot of time with your head.
Well, I think the payoff is different too. What you're getting for, like these guys on the front end who are trying to go for the buckle, or those who get the buckle, that to me is, there's almost like a level of performative rock star status to it.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people that are motivated by that, which is fantastic. But there's also a lot of people who are not motivated by that. I actually think that's the majority of the population, to be honest.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
I remember at Polar Roll, this is kind of when my eyes were open to it, the first Polar Roll, when, that year we had a cutoff. We were coming from Ishpeming to Marquette. Remember, we finished on the fireman's stairs there going into Lower Harbor.
Oh, yeah.
So at 2:30, I went over to, I think it was Wilson Street, where the snowmobile trail, the course came out onto, I believe maybe it was Vandenboom. I don't remember. We knew that Liz Finkelstein was our last rider back, and we were tracking her, and we're like, it doesn't look like she's going to make the cutoff. We're going to have to pull her. Mm. So I met her on the trail. She was a ways away from the checkpoint that she had to get to and leave by like 2:30. And I told her, I'm like, you're not going to make it. And she looked at me, and she's like, just please don't pull me. I won't quit. Just please don't pull me. And I can't relay the emotion that she shared. And I just remember standing in that moment with her, and I'm like, fuck, I can't pull her. So I just told her, I'm like, listen, if you're not going to quit, we won't quit. We will wait for you down in Lower Harbor, but get your ass moving. So she took off. And that is what's actually started that, for me, a journey of understanding, like the people who finish on the front end, they arrive at the finish line with crowds cheering their name.
Right.
Right. And that is definitely a level of awesome. Both performative and then for them exciting because the crowds are there cheering their name, they're recognizing the podium, etc. But those people who roll in to the finish line, after everybody else has gone home and the only dude there is me, maybe my wife, you know, back in the early days, Chris Anderson, the registration czar.
Yeah.
That's a whole different level of mental fortitude and awesome. And I've always tried to say, like, whether you're on the front end or the back end, both matter.
Yeah.
Right. And I respect somebody who stays out at Polar Roll for 12 hours or Marji Gesick for 25 as much as I respect a buckle guy or a buckle gal. Well, we haven't had a buckle gal yet. That's a whole different topic. But, you know, a buckler, like they're both, to me, incredibly impressive.
Right. Right. I absolutely agree. And, you know, I'm biased. I have my own perspective. I'm one of those guys who's not an athlete. I don't know. Just hanging out. And it's more about just trying to get her done. But if you think about it, the folks that are out there 24 hours, they're putting in twice the time. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, you're not out there, I guess now maybe a little bit more because the finish line at Marji actually stays pretty damn lively right through the wee hours, you know, right up to 6 a.m. I'd say is when it starts to die down because there's not many people left on course. But you're not like, it's always fascinating to me. Well, go back to your crusher. So in 21, when you finished it, because you finished at El Qual that year, do you remember approximately how many hours?
33.
Okay. I think the cutoff was like 36 maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. It was
so,
close.
I mean, what, you know, you and Kenny, right? Peterson?
Yeah.
So what kept you going? Like what is in, because you're not winning. You're not winning.
That puts it, you know, lightly, but yeah.
Nobody's really there except maybe your family to see you finish, right?
Yeah.
So what kept you going? What keeps you going?
Well, I think it just, yeah, that's a really good question. At some point, it just comes down to I'm more committed to finishing this than I am to stopping. And you get to a point where you just, everything hurts so much, you can't hurt anymore. I don't know. You just reach your peak pain and you just go, well, it can't get worse, I guess. I just have to keep doing this. I'm not writing the book on how to overcome difficult situations, but I'm not an athlete. I haven't done a lot of endurance events. I'm not winning any races ever. I guess my one skill is just being able to just keep pedaling through.
To push through.
Yeah, just.
You've always had that?
I guess I've always had that mentality. I've never had it transition to endurance athletics before. I think, you know, growing up, I've just always been able to like just get through stuff. You know, going through college and work and medical school and that kind of stuff. I was certainly never the brightest kid. I was, you know, above average, but, you know, I got decent grades, but I was never, you know, like I 40th at a class of 400 or something. I've always been a B+ type of guy, you know.
Okay.
But it comes down to just working really hard for me because a lot of this stuff didn't come super easily. So it was just about just having to work a little bit harder, and so that has transitioned me to all these other aspects of my life.
Would you say that you would you identify with yourself as somebody who works hard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Go back for a second. You had said you referred to yourself as not an athlete.
Well, I don't know. Yeah.
Do you think that there's people that would identify you as an athlete?
Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say that I'm not. I am. I am now, but my entire life. I mean, there are plenty of folks out there that have been biking or skiing or running or doing competitive athletics really their whole lives, and I got into skiing and biking in my 30s. So that hasn't been my story. But having said that, I've been doing it for 15 years now, which gives you my age. So I've become an athlete. I can't say I'm not. But.
So position this. I'm going to try to talk through this, but I want you to receive this as a doctor or as a physician. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have to imagine that you work with patients that have a wide range of fitness and wellness.
Yeah.
And I would venture to believe that you would agree, regardless of whether they view themselves as an athlete or not, or athletic or not, some level, some minimum standard of athletic and physical fitness, which I think will also tie to a minimum level of mental fitness. Like we should all, regardless of whether we're doing endurance events, 5Ks, or sitting on the couch, there should be some minimum level of exercise that would improve one's life experience. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Do you think that I've toyed with this idea a lot, because this idea of am I an athlete or am I not seems to be the qualifier for am I going to be fit and hold myself to a high standard of wellness and fitness. And if the answer is I'm not an athlete, then it's like, well, that's only something that athletes do. I'm not going to do this because I'm not an athlete. Meanwhile, you know, they're 40 pounds overweight. They feel like shit. They're in a job they hate, and they don't have the mental or the physical fortitude to get out of it because they don't work out and challenge themselves. So I'm just curious, like, is the beginning piece that we figure out how to normalize training as something you do as regularly as brushing your teeth and just other minimum things that we do to maintain our health and wellness.
Yeah. Well, my opinion, which is my opinion, but it's based on a lot of evidence and
Right.
the research that I've read and a lot of the experts that I also follow or listen to or read on. Yeah, I think that it all goes together, right? If you have the mental fortitude to get up every day and hit the gym, then you're going to have the mental fortitude to be a more active member in your community, be a better worker, be a better parent to your kids, so it all comes around. And when you work hard at your job, it's going to transfer into working hard at the gym, it's going to transfer into getting a good quality night's sleep, which is going to transfer into working hard at eating healthy. And so all these things. So it starts to build on itself, but it's that first initial step. And, as far as, what do we classify and what do we call an athlete or not? I guess if that's limiting for some individuals, that's something they need to work through. But I think we get too much into that in our own heads, and that's where it has to start. Is in your brain. We have to start thinking about what's best for me. How can I improve my life? And it, even if you don't see yourself as an athlete, that's okay. There's still all kinds of things that you can do to open that door. And like I said, it took me a long time to get to this point, and I'm still developing and growing and building my personal wellness journey, right? But when I started this, I could ride my bike a mile and I'd be completely wiped. And then I did that for a while, and then I just grew it from there. And everybody has to find out what works for them. And no matter where you're coming from in this, you need to find a way to stay active for all of those benefits. That's probably the most important thing that we can do in our lives, is that level of activity, because it's going to be the trigger for all those other components of our lives for wellness.
In your opinion, a lot of what will initiate behavior would be goals we set for ourselves, right? It's tricky because I think endurance events, or any type of event is a solid catalyst for instigating additional activity, training, etc. But I see a lot of people, like for Marji, they'll get into the race, they get caught up in the hysteria and the momentum of registration, maybe because everybody else is doing it, maybe because they're at the bar with their buddy who's signing up, they're drinking, and then all of a sudden this seems like a good idea 3 beers deep. And then they wake up in the morning and they're like, oh my God, what did I do? But my point is, I see a lot of people have wellness-related, fitness-related activities. They're incentivized by these events or big goals. And then as soon as that event or big goal is either behind them or they decide like, you know what, this really isn't that important. Maybe I'll do it next year, and they let it go. Everything they were doing that was, health related, having a positive impact, they just let it go. So I'm curious, like from a psychological standpoint and, scaffolding, incentives and just, do you see a particular way that people tend to set themselves up for success to live these active lives and to maintain positive habits for fitness, regardless of whether they're an athlete or not?
Yeah, I think there's a good point there. I think there's two types of folks, and I think there are those folks that need that event to train for. There's a big presentation they have to give. There's a big trip that they're going to be taking. There's an athletic event that they signed up for, and that keeps them motivated to work towards that goal. And I think that's great. There's a lot of good evidence out there that is a good motivating tool for a lot of people. What's the Japanese term for the Misogi challenge?
Oh, Masaji?
Yeah. Yeah. But everybody should do one a year, and it should be
one really super challenging
hard
task
thing that you should feel like you probably won't complete it. It should be, and you should have that, and it doesn't have to be an athletic event. It might be something that you've just never done.
Sure. But it's something you could fail.
And you should.
Failure is as likely as success,
and
right?
It should be like, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this, but I'm going to really try and see what happens. And if you do fail, that's also an extremely rewarding experience and learn from. And you have plenty of great stories from the 906 events about that. But so that's one class of individual. And I think, I think a lot of people benefit from that. But I'm also a big fan of BJ Fogg's work out of Stanford, and he does a lot with habit building. And for those folks, it might not need to be this grand, massive event in the far off future. Because for some people, it's just like, maybe it's too overwhelming. If something comes up, it's real easy to go, well, I can't, this happened or that happened. So it's just an easier way to step away. And then like you said, when that happens, then everything's kind of lost. Whereas, tiny habits that we do every day can grow and build. And so it depends on what type of person, so when we talk about that, it might be, someone might just say, I really got to get healthier, and going to the gym for an hour every day is just too daunting for that person. They're just not
intimidating.
Yeah. And so they're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Even though they know they should. And so instead of doing anything at all, they end up doing nothing. And the alternative to that might be just do the one thing that you can do. And it might be just once a day, when you get up in the morning, do one push-up.
Yeah.
Just do one push-up. And when you start there, he's like, who can't do one push-up or one,
sure,
just do one lunge. And people look at it, well, anybody could do that, but just do it then. Just do one a day. That's it. And then what happens is people will go, well, I'm doing it. I might as well just do 5 or 10. But at least I got my one done for the day. And then overall, as time goes on, you can build from that. And, eventually at some point, maybe you can get to a point where you can say, now I'm ready to move on to that next thing.
The gym is actually, so it triggered a thought. Like, I know that the gym is an intimidating space for many people, lots of adults. You can, around the first of the year when new people come in, and throughout the year when new people come in, you can pick them out. It's like they're glowing as they walk in there. It's tracer rounds on them. So I get it. I understand it. And a lot of times, probably more often than not, I see the new people not keep coming back.
Yeah.
They eventually, it's just too weird. And I don't know where they go. Maybe they get a home gym, but I think that they stopped doing it. And, I think that part of it is people, it's like they go into this space, whether it's a gym or something else, where they're uncomfortable. And they go in with an expectation that they should be comfortable. And I think that there's a lot of this in life in general, that people carry this expectation, and I'm only going to go where I'm comfortable. So anytime that they're uncomfortable because they haven't trained being uncomfortable, they will immediately, well, not maybe immediately, but eventually they'll retreat from that space because they want to get back to where things feel good.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
We were evolved to not be in pain.
But what's what's crazy though now is we have that awareness and that understanding. Like, you should be able to objectively step back and be like, okay, what I'm feeling doesn't feel good. I'm also wired, instinctively to survive, right? To feel this way. But we're not cavemen anymore.
Yeah.
We're not living in rock shacks. I mean, we're living in pretty good conditions, probably better than ever in the history of our race. So there should be sort of an intellectual way to approach it. Like, I have the choice to feel this discomfort, right? 1,000 years ago, you didn't have the damn choice.
Right. Or you didn't survive.
Yeah, you didn't survive. So now it's really more about understanding. And this, I would even extend this for parents right through to their children and through the families. Like, if you can't sort of methodically and objectively work through this with yourself and your kids and understand that you have to voluntarily take on some hard stuff and get comfortable. I mean, this sounds cliche, but it's true. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you don't do that, you're going to be in a tough spot because you're still going to end up being uncomfortable because you're going to be unhealthy. You're going to have all sorts of different issues psychologically or physically. So you end up not being comfortable. It's just you don't necessarily get to choose the discomfort.
Yeah, there's something really empowering about choosing your discomfort.
100%.
Do you want to be uncomfortable in a controlled way now for short bursts of time that you manage? Or do you want to be horribly uncomfortable when you're older and medically really unwell?
Right.
And that applies to anything in life, not just your body, but, physically uncomfortable, mentally uncomfortable, doing the harder things to train your mind and to excel at mental wellness, emotional wellness, social and community wellness. So those are all part of it too. But I do know that we have to acclimate to that.
Sure.
You can't just say, well, I'm doing the Marji this year and I've never been on a bike before. So you should find the discomfort, but in the sadistic way that's, you can acclimate to. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the folks that are struggling at the gym, to circle back to that, you have to find a way to make it sustainable. Mm-hmm. So if you make it so uncomfortable that you just won't do it, mm-hmm. that nobody wins, mm-hmm. right? So find the activity that you find uncomfortable, but do it with those that are going to support you.
Sure.
Find a support group. Find the activity that, is tough to do, but is really rewarding after, and you feel good after the fact. And so people all the time, they're like, God, I just hate the treadmill. I'm like, well, don't get on the damn treadmill. Do something else.
Do something else.
Treadmills are horrible. I get it. I mean, if
right.
you love your treadmill, then you're weird, but also enjoy it.
Right.
But just find the thing, because the best. And I just heard this yesterday. The best activity, the best exercise. Do you want the best exercise for everybody?
No.
The one they're going to do.
No.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. So it doesn't matter what it is. Everybody asks, well, should you run? Should you bike? Should you ski? Should you, what's the activity that you should be doing? Do you need to go to the gym? No. You need to do what you're going to sustain. And that's true for a lot of things in life. So find that activity. And there are so many great options everywhere, but here in Marquette in particular, there's so many great opportunities to do this as a group. And there are so many skilled athletic trainers out there that are helping people find that. And so when you feel that intimidation, make it. And here's the other thing. The one thing I wish people would take from this is the financial aspect, which we're not going to get into that much, but I wish folks could understand how much it's affecting them by not investing. when you say, I just can't afford a
Right.
gym membership, I can't afford to work with a trainer. I'm
You
like,
can't afford not to.
you can't. You really can't. So I'll tell you what folks look like when they get into their 60s and 70s and they haven't done anything. That money that they could have spent is now being spent on all kinds of other crap that they wish they weren't spending it on, which is
Meds.
procedures and medications and hospital visits and doctor's appointments. And who wants to spend their 60s and 70s living like that? So you got to invest early. And I tell all my patients this and my family, you should never skimp on your wellness and your health.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to maybe cut corners and try to save some money here and there to, support your finances, you should do that, but it should never be, I need to cut costs because I have to, your health should always be worth that investment.
Yeah. You touched on something, you sort of alluded to finding a group of people to do something with, activity. I think that is a critical component because our environment drives so much of our life experience. And when you look at, well, let's just say with 906 Adventure Team through the event community and then also the parallel youth adventure team community, I think that when you try to do something hard alone, it's daunting. And I think the failure rate's probably a lot higher. But when you put yourself or you put people into an environment such as the event community or the youth adventure team community, the odds of success are so much greater because you're supported. You have that, what have we referred to it before as? You basically have a sense of belonging, right? Which a lot of people of all ages, I think right now, they struggle with a sense of belonging because there's there's not as much true in-person community building going on, which a lot of times these events offer that sense of.
Yeah.
Think about the support crews at Marji, Crusher, Polaroid, like just that total community experience where everybody's out there doing something shitty and hard, but finding a way to laugh at it and, swearing about it. And there's this support station and that. Like, I think my suggestion would be for people who are, struggling to make changes or progress. I think the first thing you got to do is you got to find a group of people that you can connect with, and they can help bring you along.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're in a tough space, in this country, as far as our isolation and loneliness and disconnect. And it's an epidemic, as the Surgeon General's written about this and talked about it many times, is that we have an epidemic of loneliness in this country. And we need to get back to, we're more connected digitally than we've ever been, but more disconnected. And we have to model this for our kids, and we have to do it for ourselves.
Yep.
We have to get back out there and do the things and find out what works for you. But that's a good place to do it. If you're going to do the hard things, do it with somebody that you can commiserate with. And that's important because we have to get back to building this community up. It's so important.
Don't you think that part of it too, like through our events, I think this has become very obvious. There's sort of, there's just a sense of humor that we always seem to be able to find in the ridiculous stuff that we're doing, the hard stuff, some of the mind games that get played in the events. I don't know that people realize it as they're going through it or doing it, but I feel like we're helping teach people how to laugh through adversity, how to smile during adversity. Whereas a lot of people who have not had these experiences with events like this, and it doesn't even have to be our event, just events like this that take you to that limit. Like they don't know how to kind of keep it light and laugh when shit's going sideways.
Yeah. I mean, that it's certainly can be humorous. It's a dark humor most of the time, but
sure.
But that's what it is. And I'm not here to say. I guess what I should say is the community on social media for these events is is wild. I don't spend a lot of time on social media because, it's not a good thing for most reasons.
Agreed.
But there are some really good things that it can do. And some of these groups, the Marji support group and those and others, it's a really interesting group of folks. And comparing this to other events, I'm not going to name specific names, but these are 906 events are very separate. It's just a very different, and the folks that have done it and have done other events, they just know. And that's why it keeps filling up.
What do you think is different? What's the big?
It's just the whole mentality of it, right? It's never about winning. It's about finishing. And
finishing what you start.
And that is a whole different outlook on the entire thing. But not only that, it's about digging in, supporting those around you, getting through to the finish line, and realizing there's that humility there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I think most people would agree it's not this failure of your person and when you can't finish it, and whereas other events it might be it's just there's just not that collaboration, there's not that support, there's just not that friendly, humorous attitude out there.
Right.
Where you're out there on this haul and you're in a and you could be in a dark mental place, but you have this group around you and you start just BSing and chatting about the course and whining and blaming Todd.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean there's that shared, as long as it doesn't get in a negative mind space, which it can.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't see, I've not seen that in other events. It's everybody's racing as an individual to get their best time.
Yep.
And it's just a totally different mentality. And that's I think important we already have enough individual competition built
Agreed.
into our society.
Yep.
And I think we need more of this collaboration.
You said something. So you mentioned humility. What I thought of right away is if you look at the two ends of the spectrum of racers, if you've got that group on the front end that's trying to buckle or just win, there is this sense when they do that they are somehow bigger than the moment. They are bigger than the event. They've overcome. They've beat the challenge. They've got the buckle, right? Which is all good. Like I think it's great if that's your motivation and if that's what you need and that's what gets you off the couch. All the more power to you. But then if you think about everybody else behind that group of people who just want the wins and the buckles and the recognition, humility is an interesting word because I think that what they are doing oftentimes through these events, they're trying to grow into the moment. They're trying to become something greater within the moment. Like this experience, this very difficult, brutal experience that's taking them to their physical and mental limit is actually going to result in them kind of being, in their eyes, maybe at some point, worthy of having been there and finishing. So it's this sense of becoming, but the word that always resonates with me is humility, because it's the sense of, this is really hard. This is really fucking hard. And I need to level up to be able to get this done. So I think that growth is encouraged for the most part for probably 80% of the people that sign up to do this stuff.
Yeah. Well, it is a humbling experience.
Absolutely, it is.
I mean, you are at, for most people, this is going to be the lowest they'll get mentally or physically in a lot of ways. And that's so important when the rest of our lives, we're going from an air-conditioned home to an air-conditioned car to an air-conditioned office.
Sure.
And we're sitting all day. There's a reason why these events all over the country,
Mm-hmm.
but in particular here, are selling out because people are wanting the torture, believe it or not. They need this to feel part of something. They need to be humbled. People need to feel that and go, okay, this really put me in my perspective. Now I recognize that I'm just a small piece in the greater world. And that is a big part of what makes us stronger going forward. So yeah, you are a different person coming out of Marji, win or lose or finish or not. You are a different person going in than you are coming out the other end. And you could ask this of anybody who's done the event.
Sure.
I've heard many stories. Their entire outlook is changed. And you've had some great anecdotes I know that you've shared with me about lives that have been completely changed.
Oh, for sure. I think, what happens is when you get into the event, if you're willing to look at it, it helps shine a light on the variety of ways that you self-sabotage. Mm. And sometimes what the first step has to be that you sign up to do something and you quit. And then you wake up the next morning and then you start doing the autopsy and it's like, oh man, I did it again, Mm-hmm. Everybody has the stuff. Everybody does. I think that the people who get through it and improve and get to the next level are the people who can be honest about it and just look in the mirror and be like, man, I screwed up there, right? Going back to the community piece, though, I think it's a lot easier to do that when you're surrounded by, because I think that is an ethos within the community of people that we brought in and around the events and the youth adventure teams. There's an ethos of looking in the mirror, like, the whole self-supported ethos. You're on your own. Nobody's out there to save you. Most of the world right now is operating under this premonition that it's always somebody else that has to do something for me. Somebody owes me something. I deserve this. I deserve that. Our events it's just like, no, everybody's on their own. You got to figure it out for yourself. You signed up to do this. You paid money to do this. I mean, you've seen it in the field manuals that we put out for the events. Yeah. If you show up to this event and you don't know what's up, you should probably stay home, right? Like all that stuff is shared openly.
Yeah, I'll push back though a little bit in that. Yeah, absolutely. But I've done other self-supported events and it's just different,
In what way?
Well, I've watched a guy get disqualified in a long bike race because he helped his wife adjust her bike seat or some stupid thing like that. Yep. Or got a glass of water from somebody, even though, so, and whatever, that's a different event.
So that you're talking like a strict self-supported.
Yeah. And I guess my point is that you're still getting the benefits of supporting yourself with a 906 event. You're still pushing that mentality of fortitude.
Yes.
Because there isn't all this, but it's still different because there's so many people. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you've ever been at Marji, there are people there everywhere.
Yep.
And self-supported in air quotes here means at Marji, there are people all over offering you stuff.
Yes, that's
a totally different thing. I know that's not a 906.
That's a good qualifier. And I think that's actually, I'm glad you brought it up because that is the magical piece.
Yeah.
To be honest, where the self-supported piece is the event saying, I'm not helping you. I'm going to give you this challenge. We're going to describe the challenge. We're going to show up and provide the experience. But once you line up, you're on your own. The event's not helping, right? We didn't realize 11 years ago, because the one thing we didn't say is, hey, if anybody helps you, you're disqualified. So we left it open-ended, and all of a sudden, the outpouring of support, because everybody, I think people were out there and they're like, what are these people, these 100 people are doing what? That's crazy. Yeah. I can't believe they even paid money to do that. And then the next thing is, wait, the event doesn't have aid stations. The event is saying they're not going to help them. They're on their own. 100 miles? We need to help these poor bastards. And they went out. And that's what's happened is it has turned into, it's almost like a us versus them scenario where everybody is helping one another.
And I don't know if there's like official bodies of unsupported race events out there that
for sure.
You have to meet this criteria and you guys are not kosher with that.
Mark and I have talked about it. There are those events out there. Yeah. Those are, so, those events I think have a definite place.
Right.
I also think that those events are, you go back to that analogy of the gym being intimidating. I think that a lot of those events where it is a strict self-supported rule, they're super hard, super gnarly. You can't take support from anybody. They're very male-centric and ego-driven. Yeah. That's my take on it, which is a barrier. If you look at 906 events, we probably right now run about 35% of the field being female. how many, our events are recognized as some of the hardest in the country. Marji's been called the hardest single day mountain bike event in the country. I'd like to look at all these other strict self-supported events and look at what's the ratios there, what's the gender split.
Right.
So how many kids are doing those events? You've been at Marji, you've been at Crusher and Polar Roll. You see kids out there.
Yeah.
In 2015, I think that was the first year we had an 8-year-old finish the Marji Gesick 50. Now, of course, at that time it was 39, and now it's 63. But but he was 8 years old, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I want to tell me more about this. I want to know, and I think other people want to hear this. Why is that so important to you to see diversity in the field and to see kids?
Because a healthy community is going to require equal representation from men, women, and children. That's a healthy community. And the men and the women have to be able to model the sharing of leadership and the sharing of power, which all too often that is not the case. And in a lot of these instances or a lot of these events, women don't feel welcome. It's a toxic environment. I'm not saying that, I'm not blaming anybody or saying it was done on purpose. It is what it is. Having the kids out there is super important. I've had parents come to me for years and say, I think that the kids should have their own kids category. And the only parents that ever say that are the parents who want to see their kids on the podium. I think that the kids learn a hell of a lot more by right now we group them in. Like, you got a male field, you have a female field. There's no age categories. There's nothing. And really beyond that, even those categories don't matter. It's really just at Marji, it's 1,500 people, or at Crusher, it's going to be 700 people. People showing up, doing hard shit of all ages. And the adults are modeling for the kids. How awesome is it if you're 10 years old, let's say you sign up to do the Marji Gesick 50 or the Crusher 40, and you know that you're signing up to do something, or you've heard from your parents or other people that these are some of the toughest events in the country, and there's this sort of reputation that they have. And you go out and you do it and you finish it. You're 10. You're finishing ahead of grown-ass men and women. Think about the confidence boost that those kids get in the sense of independence and ability that they earn. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with the reward they were given, right? They didn't do it for a prize.
Yeah.
They did it to do it. And that's the thing I think that's missing in society today is, I believe anything that needs to be done deserves to be done at a high level, deserves to be done well. And that's what we need to teach kids. You don't need to have a trophy to work hard and do something really well. Everything that needs to get done deserves to be done well.
Yeah. Well said. And I would add to that, even potentially more is those kids that don't finish it.
Yes.
And come back.
Yes.
And that's
100%
where the real, learning happens.
Yeah.
I think the problem is, and you and I have talked about this many times, but kids don't know how to fail.
Nope.
We built a society around supporting kids through everything. And I totally understand the mentality there. We want to protect our kids. We want to keep them safe, and we want them to succeed. I want that for my kids too, but they got to lose. They got to know what it feels like to lose and to fail.
When we did
learn that.
When we did the impact study last summer, where we sent a survey out to all of the parents of all the kids in the adventure team programming, one of the biggest themes that I was able to extract from, we had a huge response rate. Like the response rate to the survey was 30%, which is unprecedented.
Yeah, it's crazy.
A theme that emerged was parents are scared for their kids, right? Natural. I get it. I have kids. I worry about my kids too, but I don't feel like I need to protect my kids. I actually feel like I need to put my kids out there. They have to go through some of the tough times. They have to experience failure in order to experience the success that follows. But that definitely resonated with me and the feedback from parents. And, you have to, so if you have kids who gravitate toward competitive athletics or traditional sports, I think that in part they're born naturally ready and just better and more equipped physically and mentally for competition. Sometimes we say that, venture team and our youth programming is not competitive. I actually think that we're making a mistake there. We are building competitors, but we're getting kids that their starting point is different. They may not be as physically gifted at this point in their development. They have had maybe less life experience that has resulted in development of certain tools at a young age. I think that's where Adventure Team comes in, because the only way that you can develop a toolbox for success is through experience. And one of the key components or ingredients is in the success, you have to fail.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a great point. And that's a good suggestion there. I would say for the parents that are worried about their kids, which we all are
Sure.
on some level, Adventure Bike Club, the Adventure Team is a great opportunity to give the kids the opportunity to take some risks, which they need to be doing
100%.
in a completely, in a solid environment. I'm not going to say it's perfectly safe, because it's not.
No,
kids,
it's inherently dangerous.
And that's what has to happen.
Yeah.
And if your kids aren't getting some blood and some tears here and there, they're not going to be ready to be adults.
No, I mean, I'd even take it to the level of they're out there with the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Right? The horse flies. Yeah. We're out there in July and August when it's 87 degrees and everybody just, as soon as you step out of your car, right? Humidity is spiked. It's 87. You can't talk without sweating. A lot of these kids are shielded just from that very basic experience of being hot.
Yeah.
How many kids have we had come back to base camp? This happens every year, where they come back crying, they got sick, right? It's a hot day. They've probably been at the beach all day or doing some other stuff during the summer. And then maybe their group goes out too hot, too fast. That's above their fitness.
Yep.
Now they're in the pain cave. They've never been in the pain cave. They're scared. They can't breathe. They never had that sensation. This is all like rite of passage type stuff.
Right.
Right. I mean, this is all basic stuff. I feel like at a point in time when I was young, that was more normal. This stuff was just more normal. It seems less normal now, but I think programs like Adventure Team, where it's not this competitive, ego-driven, trophy-driven, incentive-driven environment, and it's just more about experiential, being outside, being together, being uncomfortable, working through that. Like, that's important.
Yeah. And you said it. You're doing it with a group, and so everybody's experiencing the same difficulty that you are.
Right.
So that you can say, "Oh, I guess it's normal to have some of this frustration and difficulty," and so then it becomes more normalized.
That's actually a great point, because when you look around the field at Bike Club, you'll see, well, for Marquette at least, 15 stations. So you've got like 200, 300 people, whatever. You look around you, like, you can't, it's hard to feel sorry for yourself because everybody is going through it.
Right.
Right. Whereas now, if you step back from that, if you zoom out from Bike Club, and let's say take the kid who's really uncomfortable, who hasn't been outside and experienced a lot of these outdoor activities, and this stuff's new, and he's like kind of going through it, right? But he's going through it with a group of people, and that's kind of keeping him in it because he's not alone. Zoom that kid out and put that kid in his bedroom at home alone, right? Either on a video game or staring at his phone with whatever he's looking at. Now, if he's going through something there, whether it's some bad stuff at school or whatever it is, even maybe bad stuff at home, that kid's alone. Mm-hmm. That goes back to the loneliness and the isolation that you referenced earlier, that epidemic. Yeah. That's how we combat that.
That's right. I mean, we're building that resiliency out in the field maybe, but they take it wherever they go.
Absolutely.
And you can you can look at all the results we got from that study or that questionnaire. But I see it every year as a coach from week 1 to the end of the season, and the parents come back and they say the same thing. It is so dramatic. And that kid that's there that first week and they're miserable and they're crying and whiny because they, maybe didn't get a snack, or they didn't bring their water and it's 88 degrees, whatever.
Yep.
But you just watch these kids in a short period of time. We're only talking a matter of weeks here. And at that other end, they're totally different people. I mean, it's all these events. You could same thing with the Marji, but these kids that come out on the other side, they are building these amazing skills that are going to carry through their entire lives. It's a great thing.
Let me ask you a question. Your son's been in bike club for a couple of years, 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah.
Does he want to go every time?
He generally does.
Okay.
But, there's always, it's usually that first week. The very first
little
week
tentative.
Both of the kids are like, I don't know.
Okay.
And you know how it is. It's all kids are like this. You take them to daycare and they don't want to go, but then you go to pick them up and they don't want to leave. That kind of thing.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say generally speaking, Cable, our youngest, he always wants to go because he loves it.
Yeah.
Gavin, when Gavin was at that age, he would not want to go. I was kind of having him do it because, not because he loved to ride a bike, but because he was playing basketball. He was on a basketball team. And I said, listen, you're going to do this for this period of time because it is beneficial to your cardio, your endurance. It plays into playing basketball. When he became a freshman, I let him decide if he wanted to go anymore, and he stopped going, which is fine. But I do hear, I have Elizabeth, who's joining us next week, is on staff. She's shared the story about her son, and that first year or so, he did not want to go.
Right.
But she's like, you're going. We signed up for this. You're going to follow through on this commitment. And then once he stuck it out, he needed to stick it out. And then once he did, he got through it. Then he really grew to enjoy it. And then it resulted in a lot of, great personal change for him. But the only reason I ask that question is, if there's parents that are listening to this and hearing this, what I say is you have to understand that kids when they object to something, that's their job. That's literally what kids are intended to do.
Yeah.
And then that's where you as a parent have to step up and figure out how to parent through it, right?
Yeah.
Because when you pick the kid up, I'm going to say probably 95% of the time, once, like you said, once you pick them up, they're like, that's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love bike club. But then next week on Thursday, when you got to go back, they're like, I don't want to go to bike club. I hate bike club.
Yeah.
Right. It's that cycle.
Yeah. No, but you just have to do it. If your kid's like, I don't want to go to school, I hate school, they have to go to school.
Right. Yeah. So, do you not force them to go to school?
I have this debate with Katie and other colleagues and friends of mine, like how much pushing do you do? How much do you allow the kids to decide what? And I think you're right. There has to be a balance. They have to at least have some exposure to an extent.
Yes.
If you let your kids decide what they want to do, they're just going to, be on a screen all day. So you have to kick them out of the house.
For sure.
And every time we're going for a hike, they're like, I don't want to go for a hike, or I don't want to snowshoe today. As soon as we're out there, they're running around, they're having a blast. They always enjoy. I'm no different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm laying on my couch on a Sunday morning, like, I should probably get out for a ride.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just really comfortable in my pajamas right now.
Mm-hmm.
But once you're out there, you're like, I'm so glad I forced myself to do it. And so you need that. We all need. So you need others to help motivate you, and kids need it from their parents. And so we need to find ways to get them out. And, if a kid's really being tortured and miserable with whatever the event might be, whether it's piano lessons or football or bike club,
right?
That might not be for them, and that's okay.
Sure.
They have to at least have the exposure. They have to at least experience it to the full extent so they can say, yeah, we tried it for a full season. It wasn't for him. I think that's more rare when you find it, but you see that all the time with kids are like, God, my mom used to make me do these lessons when I was a kid and I hated it, but I'm so glad she did. Right? Mm-hmm. How many times do we hear that?
Oh, a lot.
And so there's a balance. There's a balance there.
There is. When I think of just parenting in general or working with kids in general, I think a first mistake that a lot of adults make is first of all, they think they're going to interact with children in this from an adult rational position. Like sometimes it's easy to forget you're dealing with kids that are a little younger. They're emotionally wired. They're different. They don't, first of all, pull the emotion out. Like if a kid's pissing you off, right? Making you mad, doing shit that he or she shouldn't do. You got to figure out a way to sort of redirect that behavior without coming in and interfacing with that emotion that they may have with more emotion. Because that just blows up. A lot of that happens.
Yeah.
At least, for our kids and even at bike club, I mean, generally speaking, you need to understand like how can you redirect a kid? Like you can get them, if I say to Cable, we're gonna go for a bike ride, the first thing he's gonna be like, where are we going? What's the course? Because he doesn't want to do like, the bike path because he doesn't like that. And so you kind of figure that out. And I've learned with him, it's like, if I can get him out on the bike and let him choose where we go, he's all in. Let's just go for a ride. You pick. Where are we going to go? I don't know. You tell me. Let's just get on the bike and go. It's kind of like it's almost like jujitsu or like just emotional and psychological karate with kids sometimes, where you're like parrying, moving, and you just got to kind of roll with it and figure out what works. Every kid's different.
Yeah. But I like that. That's a good point. The autonomy. Kids need to have it. They need to be
100%.
and they need to be doing their own thing. Parents need to be engaged with their children on some level, but also on the weekends in our house, we're like, we'll do an activity as a family.
Yep.
And then we're like, all right, get out of here.
Go do something.
Go do something.
Yeah.
And
where they're not being managed.
I don't need to entertain my children. I never have, and I never will. If they want to hang out with me, they can, but they need to go have their own time. And that's where the kids and that's where the learning is when they're just out with their friends or running around in the backyard or jumping around in puddles and stuff. So that's they need to do that. And I don't need to plan their day.
One of the biggest successes that I've heard come out of Adventure Team or Bike Club is at the end of the season, when a mom and a dad, or mom or a dad, whatever the scenario is, they go to the trailhead with their child who's like 6 or older, but it starts as early as 6, and that child can take them on a ride on the trails that they rode all summer during Bike Club.
Right.
And literally the adults are being led by a 6-year-old. And I've heard countless stories like that. Just think about how empowering that is for a child, right? Just so many parts of that are positive, leading your parents through the woods on a trail.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen parents have to go out and get bikes.
Yeah,
they got the kids into it. They're like, well, I don't bike. Biking's for kids.
100%.
And then before you know it, they're out there as a family, and that's great.
As a family, mom and dad get a bike. The older brother or younger sister gets associated, sees, the program. They want a bike. They want to get involved. It's, again, kind of going back to that whole community support system piece. If you get yourself surrounded with the right stuff, the right people, I mean, it seems like the road to success is so much easier.
Yeah.
Or so much more likely. I shouldn't say easier. You still got to work for it, but it's more likely.
Yeah, but I think we use this term of like hard things and easy and that, but some of it is easier, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, as you do difficult things more frequently, it becomes easier, and it becomes just part of your life and what you're doing, which isn't a bad thing.
No, it's not. I think
sometimes doing easy things isn't the end of the world either.
No,
there's a balance.
Well, there is a balance. You definitely, if there's one thing that I've learned actually in the 11 years that we've been doing this, it's you can't. Okay, so if you don't balance it out, then you turn into David Goggins, right? And you're on Instagram screaming about who's carrying the boats. And no, I'm not casting shade at David Goggins, but your average person is not going to be doing that. That's not their life experience. They're not running shirtless across the beach yelling about who's carrying the boats. They have families, they have jobs, they have other things that need to be tended to. So you do have to balance, otherwise you burn out. I think the average person who's carrying a common everyday standard workload, working man, working woman, kids going to school, kids got sports, whatever they're doing. It's hard enough just to find some time to go to the gym or take a bike ride, let alone having this ridiculous, ego-driven, over-the-top, 99-mile-an-hour dedication to doing hard things all the time, because that is not sustainable.
Right.
And that gets out of control, too, and that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you got to take...
I mean, any trainer would tell you, anybody who knows anything about resistance training, you have to have that off day.
100%.
You got to have a rest day.
You have to have rest.
That's when the real work happens. That's where the rebuilding happens. And that's true for anything we're doing, is we work hard, and then you have your recovery day, and that's important.
So we talked a little bit now on bike club and kids. I'm curious from your perspective, just as a doctor or a physician, what do you see professionally? Like, what are the benefits of the experience at bike club for kids? Or you could say this even just as a coach, because you've coached now for a few years. I'm curious what your takeaway is from the program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think we covered a lot of this, but it's just to emphasize it from a physical, mental, social health perspective that I see it from as a physician. Our kids are struggling with being more sedentary than they've ever been in the history of humanity. They're doing less exercise than they've ever done. They're larger than they've ever been in the history of humanity. They are more unwell mentally, with concerns of anxiety, depression.
What do you tie that to?
Well, there's a lot of...
Or what are the studies relating it to?
Right. So there's a lot there. There's a lot of concerns about overprotection that we've kind of touched on. There's a lot regarding screens, social media. That's a big problem, and there's plenty of other experts that have written a lot about that, but I see it every day. There's a lot related to our health habits, and we just don't do the activities like we used to, and our food industry is not helping us either. So there's a lot of different things that are all contributing, unfortunately, and I won't point to any one specific thing, but all of those things need to be addressed. And I see the nice thing about Adventure Bike Club and other organizations. I mean, it's not in a vacuum here, but there are other organizations that are also great.
For sure.
But in this particular case, what Adventure Bike Club is doing is it's getting the kids active, removing that sedentary aspect, which is going to improve their mental wellness, their resiliency. They're going to be able to do the harder things. They're going to make choices that they otherwise wouldn't have, which is going to lead to all aspects of their life. If you are feeling more confident, feeling more resilient, able to make those harder decisions, able to push yourself through difficult times in your life, it's going to be so much easier to do that in all other facets. You're going to be able to say, yeah, I don't think I want to eat that. I don't think it's really good for me. I don't think that relationship is really good for me. And I'm going to be able to stand up for myself more effectively. I'm going to be able to protect my friends who I see are maybe being, not treated well. I'm going to be able to. So all of those things feed on each other, but it has to start somewhere. And you can say, well, 9 to 6 is just a bike club, and it's that only at its very basic. It is so much more than that, because yes, it does get kids on bikes, but ask anybody who's ever done it, ask any parent who's ever seen a kid go through it. They're learning so much more life skills, and it hits on all those aspects.
You mentioned overprotection. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I've written about this before. I'm not sure. I think this also is layered as to why we do this as adults, but I see this focus on, it's cold out, don't go outside, you're going to get a cold. It's raining outside, you're going to get wet, stay inside, right?
Yeah.
Get off that tree, don't climb that tree, you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah. But it goes beyond even the safety bit of it, and just making sure that kids are always winning, always succeeding.
Right.
They're, the kid can never get
Can't experience failure.
grade. It has to be. We have to modify things to make sure that the kids are always excelling.
Yeah, even to the point of reducing standards, right?
Exactly.
Reducing standards so they still feel like they're succeeding.
Yeah, and it's across the board.
Yeah.
And we've seen the repercussions of that, and it's not helping our society.
Do you think, in part, I think in some ways there is, I think at some level there's some ego related to that, where if I can somehow get control over your activities and feel like I'm keeping you safe, that makes me feel good. It also puts me in a position of control. You follow?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people are doing this intentionally. I'm not saying it's like some nefarious, attempt to gain control. But there's a lot of ego, in my opinion, over us trying to become the voice for what is safe to do and not safe, versus what I've shared on social before, like with our kids, is I'm not teaching them what to be afraid of. That's number one. We're not teaching them what to be afraid of, because every time I teach them to be afraid of something, the cold, the woods, wolves, heat, rain, their sense of the size of their world shrinks.
Right.
Okay. We're making it smaller because now we're saying all these things. You got to be afraid of this stuff. It's dangerous. You should stay away, stay in the house. If you see this, instead, what we try to do, and here's the example I'll use, because there's a tree in the backyard. Cable loves climbing trees. And yeah, you could climb a tree. You could get way up there. A branch could break. You could fall. You could break your neck. That's not good. So I think it was last year, or it was maybe 2 years ago. He's in the backyard, like he always is, like a monkey, swinging from branches, trying to climb up the tree. And I walked over, and we had like a 30-minute conversation. It was all about risk assessment. So we stood at the base of the tree, and we just started talking through. Okay, I'm like, Cable, can you climb? Can you get up to that branch? And he's like, oh yeah, Dad, that's no problem. So he gets up there, and he's just like, he's hanging like 2 inches off the ground. I'm like, all right, let go. And he lets go, and he lands on his feet. And I'm like, that doesn't seem too dangerous, eh? He's like, no, not at all, Dad. It's not dangerous. He's like, well, can I go higher? And I said, well, let's talk about going higher. If you go up higher to that next branch, how high are you going to be off the ground? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, I think it's about 2 feet. He's like, oof, that's high. So we just kept going through that process. He went up there, got up on the branch. He was hanging from it. He was looking down. He's like, oh, that's not so bad. Let's go. He falls down on his feet. But we just talked through each branch and what could happen. What's the likelihood of a big casualty or injury? So he kind of learned how to analyze this tree and the level of danger associated with how high he was going to go, up until the point that he probably got up on a branch that was 15 feet off the ground. And when he looked down, he's like, no, coming back down, Dad. But you know what I mean? Like, you have to, instead of just giving this blanket, stay away from everything that's dangerous and scary, teach kids how to methodically work through assessment of risk in their environment.
Yeah.
And how that ability to assess risk can then lead to appropriate decision making.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised how much these kids can do it on their own.
Absolutely.
When they're gone, they're at the park, they're doing it.
Absolutely.
And they need that time without a parent to say, hey, no, get down from there. Don't be doing that. And that's where they learn to take these risks. And have I had my boy come home, or both of my kids come home crying because, they fell or injured something? Yeah, that's part of being a kid. That's part of learning. They're learning from that. That is a very valuable learning experience where they're saying, okay, that situation led to this result. So now I can understand what risk taking is all about, and I can learn from that.
And you learn.
My kids dive off the roof. No. I mean, we're still protecting our children from dangers that, and things that they can't control, like cars and traffic and guns and other stuff. Yeah. Right. I mean, don't be ridiculous, but are they able to make their own choices when it comes to obstacles at the park and sticks and those kinds of things. Absolutely. My kids were lighting fires in the backyard the other day, and Katie was like, are we okay with this? I'm like, well, it's the middle of winter. I mean, they're not going to get it to light, but let them have fun, you know? And I'm there. I'm not like ignoring this.
Right.
But
Maybe oversight from a distance.
Yeah.
Where there's this sense in their space that they're autonomous.
Yeah, that's it. They need that.
Yeah.
They need that. And there's a balance between kids knowing that parents are there when needed, but they also need to have that ability. They feel empowered when they know that parents are allowing them to make some decisions for themselves.
Well, trust is huge.
It's a really big part of it. You have to be able to do that.
You have to trust your kids, and your kids need, I think that the depth of your relationship is going to be exponentially deeper if your kids feel that you trust them.
Right.
Right. Because that is, what does trust infer? It infers respect. It infers that you have confidence in that child. Like when you were talking, one of the things that I think that I see that limits and hampers most kids' development is their parents' opinion of what they're capable and not capable of doing. Because I've seen it when we get new kids signed up for an adventure team. Those kids are coming into the program, and sometimes I'll get pulled aside by the parent. And I mean, this is every year this happens. The parent pulls me aside and starts telling me what the kid can and can't do. And I'm like, we got this.
Yeah, right.
What the kid needs is to be detached from that limited, that finite thinking, and just put out with the group into the woods.
That's right.
That's 100%. Like we can hold a kid back just simply with what we think they can or can't do.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's beautiful with, with the adventure team programming is that it, as you know, parents cannot coach their kids, which 99% of parents love.
Yeah, it'd be a horrible idea.
It would be terrible. it would be absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's good for the parent and it's good for the child. And the other thing I'd say is that's cool because I had this experience with Cable because I didn't coach them. When you drive home, you get to share stories.
Yeah, yeah.
You had two different experiences. Your child gets to share their experience with you, and then you get to share your experience with them. And there's just like this interactive. I don't know how to describe it. I think it builds trust. I think it builds a relationship, relatability.
No, I agree 100%. I love that.
You're going to the same place and you're having two different experiences and you get to go home and share them with each other.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
I agree.
So I was thinking this too. What's next for you? What are you signed up to do this year?
Well, I'm coaching, of course.
Oh.
I'll be coaching again. I'm doing.
Did you sign up for the Crusher point to point?
No, I don't think so. Not this year. We're doing. That was a unique year. I probably won't do that again. Just because we have this crew.
Yeah.
That we all do it together. So.
Like
I said, suffer as a group, and we've done it together for a long time, and we're gonna do it again. We're super excited for the venue, by the way. I think
the Keweenaw's gonna be great.
Yeah, it's gonna be so good. I think we're doing the 100, whatever the.
How is it the same crew you did the EX with Polaroid?
Pretty much.
What was your take? So the Polaroid, the EX has been on like Ramba and NTN, and established mountain bike trails for 5 years.
Yeah.
What was it like getting out? Completely different area. It's not really bike trails like we're grooming.
Yeah.
CFA property. What was that like?
Well, this is my perspective. I thought it was pretty tame compared to usual.
Right. What you've come to expect.
Well, it was flat.
Yeah.
Comparatively.
Right.
Which is why it made sense for it to be longer.
Yeah.
Which I was great with. But there are other members of my party that thought differently.
In what way?
Well, just they're not doing as much riding.
Oh,
and
sure.
They thought it was a long day, which it was, but it was beautiful though. Course was, it was amazing. It was so nice.
You know what I like about the courses this year for the EX?
Well, it's unique because here's what I love. I want to say this too. The great thing about 906 events, almost entirely, is these are on courses that you just, in particular, the Crusher. The Crusher is so unique in that you would never ever be there
without
on a bike,
without
on
the
a car,
event
or anything.
Yeah.
And you find these magical places in the Upper Peninsula that you're like, wow, I didn't know this was back here.
Right.
That random mining site in the middle of nowhere
Yep.
in the graveyard, and
Yep.
then all these really cool waterfalls that you're finding.
Yep.
Like, wow, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And that's super cool. I love that part about it, and it's a magical part. I mean, that's part of the whole experience, is that it's not just head down grinding. It's about appreciating the world that we live in,
Looking around.
experiencing that awe.
Yep.
That's a big part of being human too.
Yeah.
And I love that part about that. And that I found that was really enjoyable for the EX course this year. I like that a lot. And that was similar to the secret course.
Yeah. Yeah. The secret level.
Yeah, that was good too. But it's just good to have variety.
Yeah.
You know, when you do the same course year after year after year after year, I get it. You know, you kind of get used to it.
Yep.
You know what's happening, but I don't know, man. I love that variety. I think just adds a little bit of adventure.
Yeah, I think at a point, I think at a point, if you're doing the same course over and over and over and over again, at some point, the payoff, what you're getting from it, I don't know. I think it's minimal. I liked the courses this year for Polar Roll, the EX version, because what's different about these this year is once you start, you kind of have no choice but to finish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had to go out comfortable being autonomous out there, knowing like you're alone. There's nobody out there where we're grooming, completely solo or with the group you're with. I think that's a good step for a lot of people.
There wasn't a cutoff. You
No.
were committed. I mean, you could drop a car, I suppose, but you're out there.
It's pretty tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you're in, you're in, whereas the other stuff, the ability to quit is always there because you can just be like, jump off, roll into town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was I think that was part of it for Crusher for me. That most Crushers, I mean, you're committed on Crusher, that you're out there you're in the middle of nowhere.
100%.
So when you're out there, you're like, well, I don't have a choice. I have to finish this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always a way to get out. You can call and have somebody pick you up, but it's so the Marji gets people every time because you're there at Jackson.
Sure.
And you're like, oh God, my car's right there.
I can quit.
I'm already.
My wife is right here.
Yeah, everybody's here. I got food.
My husband's right here.
I could be in my bed in 20 minutes.
I don't need to drag my bike through 6 hours in the dark.
That's the hardest part of Marji. And if that weren't there, I wonder how many more people would just finish it because they don't have a choice.
If they had no choice, they'd finish.
Yeah. But
the challenge with people, with us, is having a choice.
That is the hardest mental challenge right there. Of everything you do that day, it's getting back on at mile 85. That's the hardest part.
I've never, when I just said that piece about having a choice, like for me, working out, going to the gym, or when I'm training on the bike, when I'm dedicated to it, whatever the mode of training is, I look at it like there's no choice. This is what has to be done. Mm-hmm. So right now I'm mainly in the gym. I'm not really on the bike much at all, training for anything, because that's just not in my worldview at the moment. But there's always some level of training that's occurring every day, daily. And I wonder how some people are able to like remove that idea of choice. Because I think once you remove like the ability to not do it,
right?
Even during like the ultra 10 days ago when we were doing Polar Roll Ultra, that event runs from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Mm-hmm. 2 of those days, I found an hour to get away and go to the gym. Yeah. It was non-negotiable. I'm not going to not go to the gym.
Yeah.
Here's another thing when you're able to do that too. If you can incorporate high-level training into your daily routine when you're still performing as a parent at a high level, being engaged in your family's life, being there for your kids, to take them here, take them there, take them to the gym with you when you go, performing your job at a high level, right? Not making excuses for like, why, okay, I'm going to skip the gym today because I got all this stuff going on, or I'm going to do a shittier job at work today because I got all this stuff going on. And just like learning to pin the standard, or just actually serve the standard, just create a standard and you serve the standard. Right? You can't change the standard. Standard never changes. You're just constantly like trying to claw up to the top of it. Knowing some days you're not going to. Some days you're going to fall short. Some days you're going to get almost there and fall down. But that standard never changes.
Yeah.
Man, when you're able to do that, and that becomes just a daily routine, and really it's almost like you have to have this sense of service. You have to realize that the task to stay at that level is bigger than maybe you'll ever be, but that's what motivates you.
Yeah. Well, that's where you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But it has to just be a habit.
Yes.
Right? You have to just go, oh, well, I would never not brush my teeth. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah. If you're not brushing your teeth, brush your teeth.
Or whatever it is.
Or whatever it is.
In your life. But it's like, no, you just like, I'm just the guy that's going to ride my bike to work. That's just what I do.
Right.
I'm going to go to the gym every day. That's just what I do. That's who I am.
Right.
And so I'm not a person that doesn't go. I'm not a person that doesn't brush my teeth.
Even if go to the gym, do that workout. Even if you go in, because here's the thing. I think people will write off a workout and they'll skip the gym on a day where they're tired or they've had a shitty day or they think they're going to go to the gym and they're going to have a bad workout. Some of my best workouts that I've ever had, have been on the days I went into the gym feeling the shittiest. And I think there's something psychological about it because let's say you're at a point in your day where you're at a low point and now it's like, oh great, now I got to go do deadlifts and squats.
Yeah.
And, oh fuck.
Yeah.
But you go in and you're like, I'm going to suck it up and do it. This is going to suck. And you get through your first couple of sets. And it's like, that's the change you needed in the day and in your energy and momentum to get to go in another direction.
That's the most important time to go.
Absolutely.
The most important day to go is when you feel the worst.
Yep.
Because that's pushing you to overcome adversity.
Exactly.
You think I'm not going to brush my teeth because I feel crummy?
Right.
I'm going to brush them more.
Right.
So yeah, the days that I'm just like, God, I'm just not feeling it. That's the day I need it.
That's the day you got to go. You got to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Those are, and I think, it's not just good. It's not just beneficial for you. I think it's also beneficial. Like, I take my boys to the gym with me frequently. Like, they both started around when they were 12. It's become habitual. And I think Cable, if he was sitting here, I could ask him and he'd probably agree. Some of his best workouts have been on the days when I went up to him and I said, hey, you ready to go to the gym? And he's like, I don't want to go to the gym. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I'll wait a half hour and then I'll be like, hey, I'm taking off. You ready? And then his mind has had time to reset. And he's like, fine.
Yeah.
Let me get my stuff. He goes. And then he gets in there. I actually can think of 3 different times in the past year where he's kind of resisted going. But I found a way to, again, going back to that whole parental jujitsu with emotions and temperament with kids. I get him in the car. Once we're at the gym, we're good.
Yeah.
And then he's had PRs on those days.
Yeah.
On the bench or whatever it is that he was doing. You just got to get him there.
Well, it's like with all these other things that we've been talking about. For me, I do a lot of other stuff too. And it's like yoga. I feel like garbage and I don't want to go do it. But I'll tell you that last 10 minutes of yoga when you've done hard stuff and then you're just like, God, it feels so good after. That lake jump, nobody ever looks forward to that. It's miserable. It's horrible. But God,
until you're done.
Once you come out, man, does that feel good. And so the body needs that. It needs to get through that because everything feels better when you've had to push yourself through something difficult.
Yeah.
The whole world feels better all the time.
Yep. What time is it? 9:20. You've got something at 9:45.
Yeah.
We got to get the hell out of here.
Okay. That was a long.
That was a long time.
That was a long talk.
All right. We're out.
All right.